talking about bigger meets. Was it your second meet where you did USPA Collegiate Nationals? I can't remember if there was
Yes, it
one.
was. Yeah, it was
Okay.
Collegiate Nationals and the Battle for the Great Lakes, and then the I don't remember what they called the one at Liberty University, but it was IPF Worlds, like not the but it was
Or
like
is it IPL?
IPL, yeah, IPL World. What do they call it?
Was it the World Cup?
Commonwealth Games. That's what it's
Oh,
called.
okay, there you
Commonwealth Games, because it's in Virginia. So it was like the IPL Commonwealth Games.
Yeah. So can you kind of describe to me, I don't know, what it was like to move up the ranks like that? Because you're going from the small meet fairly accelerated. If I'm remembering, it was within a year you went from local meet to collegiate nationals, and then probably within another year went to the international level. What was that like?
It was all in 1 year, because 2017, 2018 was all I did it for. But I want to, before we start, you said the accelerating at the state meet. You remember why I accelerated at state meet? Because you came up to me on my last deadlift. I had never pulled that much before, and you came up to me, you're like, "You want to win?" And I was like, "Yeah." And you didn't even tell me the number, and it was like 30 pounds over my PR, and that's how I got there. And I was like, "Okay."
I have a tendency to do that.
But
just like throw a giant number on and be like, I know this motivates you here, and you just would get pissed off and do it.
Yeah. It's probably because you smacked me on my back real hard.
Probably, that got like 50 pounds out of that back slap, I'm sure.
But so the transition was good, and it probably got better as I learned the sport itself, and two, getting proper stuff to help me with lifts, like for instance, I didn't have squat shoes or anything like that. The first meet, I was just in the chucks or whatever we called them, just flat deadlifting shoes, and I wore it for all three events. So I'd say that's part of it that helped, where I had quality belts, wraps, things of that nature. But really just getting the experience and getting it under your belt, the first one to the next one and everything. Learning the techniques on how to be really efficient when it comes to your lifts. Learning how to properly arch your back, like lock in your shoulders, things like that on bench press. How to properly deadlift, because when I first started deadlifting, trying to get strong, I was sumo. Then you're like, yeah, you got kind of long femurs. You might want to do conventional. So I was like, okay, we'll try conventional. And then just learning the sport, learning how to do it properly. Obviously, like you said, raw strength is great and all, but it doesn't win all the time, because you got to do the right things. And getting that under my belt and having really good people in my corner, such as you. I've had like meets that you couldn't make it. I had people that could make sure I was set, ready to go. But I would say, like, one thing that was beneficial was like being a super competitive person. Jumping from states to nationals was just like, okay, we got a few more people we got to beat today, or nationals to the international stage was, we got to beat these people. Or at that time, I kind of had an idea of what the squat record was going to be, and I was like, okay, let's try to get that goal today. But overall, the transition was a great time, great experience. Met a lot of really good lifters and things, and yeah, but like I said, learning the ins and outs of it on top of being pretty competitive made it a very smooth transition to each level.
Yeah, and I think you're another great example of like that. Those transitions worked well. I think because you're naturally athletic with the football background and like being able to know your body in space. Somebody who's just coming off the couch and starting powerlifting might have struggled with that, I would say. And then also I wanted to ask, because you competed in USPA and IPL, which is similar but slightly different than like USAPL, IPF. And in my experience, I've had, some judging that I would say is slightly more harsh at the international level, even though the rule book's written all the same. So I'd like to have your perspective. Did you seem to notice any change in judging throughout the levels?
I could probably say when I went to the international level, like when I got the world record for squat, I was 2-1, and I had been in local and national meets, and I usually get all 3 white lights when it comes to my squat. So it was a little bit different. They got me for depth on one of my hips, but I mean, again, I also squat pretty, like, kind of not straight like at most people. It's a little bit cockeyed a little bit because of when I played football. That's how we were taught to do things. So it was a little bit different. So I could see maybe potentially where one's higher than the other because it feels the same on both, but if one leg's back a little bit, it could cause an issue. But I said the international meet, it was they were a little bit more strict when it came to the squat depth. Like I said, because usually I don't ever have any issues with getting the depth or even getting one red light, and I did, which still counts, but ended up getting it when I usually don't. So
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's a good take home point for anyone who's listening. And I don't want it to come across like I was complaining that the standards were more strict. The best thing we can do as lifters sometimes is just say, like, hey, yeah, it is what it is. Maybe this is what happened, like you said, with the cockeyed stance. And if they are being more strict, you've just got to adjust. So, yeah, that's a good mindset to have. And I would probably, say if I had to choose, I would rather them be more strict at the international level than less strict, because you don't want world records being broken with high squats or something ridiculous.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm walking through here. You did your international meet and you set the world record squat. I don't know if we fully established this. Remind me again, was it junior 93 kilo or is it 90 kilo? Do you remember?
90 kilo, because yours is 93 and yours,
yes.
So ours was 90, because I always had to do those crazy cuts to get down to that weight, but I don't miss doing that for sure. but yeah, so it was a 90 kilo junior division world record for squat.
Yeah, and that's a big accomplishment.
It's not held today. Remember,
we had our wall of fame.
Yeah.
I wish I had a picture of that thing to throw.
I still do.
On the screen.
I still got it. So
maybe I'll add that in the thumbnail if you'll shoot that over to me.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, we had all